1967 was the year a fairy tale came true. Celtic, a homegrown side from the East End of Glasgow, qualified for the European Cup for the first time and beat Inter Milan, the costliest team in Europe. They were the first British team ever to reach the final. At home, they coupled victory in Europe with something no previous winner of the European Cup had ever achieved: a grand slam of victories in their national cup and league competitions in the same season. In passing, they also lifted the only two remaining Scottish trophies, the League Cup and the Glasgow Cup. Previous winners of the European Cup, like Real Madrid, Benfica and Inter Milan, had roamed 3 continents to bring back players at astronomical transfer fees. Of Celtic's first team pool of 16 players, 12 were reared by Celtic, and the other 4 came from the Glasgow region, and in total cost a mere £65,000. Even more important than the victories themselves was the manner of their achievement. Defensive soccer had been slowly strangling the game. Celtic ushered in a new era of fast, attractive football. And gave the fans what they came to see: goals. 200 in a season. Yet they played the second half of the season without their ace goal scorer Joe McBride, who still managed to score more goals in half a season than anyone else in Scotland in the whole year. What is the secret of this remarkable team and their support? Celtic support is not merely the crowd at a football match. The club newspaper, the Celtic View, sells over 30,000 copies a week and is sent all over the world to supporters abroad who may have only childhood memories of a green and white jersey and a few fading photographs to sustain them. Yet still they listen on shortwave radio for news of the Celtic score, and still letters home begin: "How the Celts do." There are teams in every continent named after Celtic and playing in green and white jerseys. There are Celtic supporters clubs all over the world. One in Kearney, New Jersey, recently invited Jimmy McGrory across as their guest of honour at their annual dinner, while American supporters like Jim Mellon often make the trip back to Glasgow for key games.
In New York.
But it's the home support that's the foundation of it all. Celtic are a Glasgow team, and Glaswegians take their football seriously. It's not just a game. It's their 90-minute revenge on the rest of the week. Glasgow, a divided city. A city which has imported Ireland's problems as well as its people. Celtic players have been of all religions and none. But the bulk of the support are still Catholics of by now distant Irish origin. The bond between Celtic and their support is a very special one.
This Celtic Football Club, in which I have the great honour to be chairman, is much more than a football club. To a lot of people, it's been a way of life. It was founded really for charitable purposes, to feed the poor of the East End of Glasgow.
The East End of Glasgow today. The welfare state has not yet eradicated Glasgow's poverty. It is here that Celtic have their roots. this room that they were founded in 1888, as the circular said, to provide funds for the maintenance of dinner tables for our needy children in the missions of St. Mary's, Sacred Heart and St. Michael's. The poverty of the 1880s was a poverty without hope. For the immigrant Irish, untutored, unskilled, and often unwanted, it was worse. They were cheap labour, resented as such. And to give edge to the resentment, they had a different religion. No welfare state, no unemployment relief. The only refuge, the pawnbroker, if you had anything left to pawn. And so it was that a local headmaster, Brother Walfrid, a Marist brother, founded Celtic. Celtic were an immediate success, Scottish Cup finalists in their first season. At matches involving Celtic, the gates doubled. Brother Walfrid had started more than he knew. Supporters' break clubs were formed, linked to temperance organisations, a practice which has long since discontinued. To captain that first Celtic team, he brought from the famous Renton Football Club James Kelly, the father of the present chairman. Also in the team, Willie Maley. Soon, Kelly was to become a director and later chairman, while Willie Maley became the club's manager for over half a century. In their 80 years, Celtic have had only 4 managers, all of them ex-players. Willie Maley was the boss right up till 1940, when he was succeeded by one of his former captains, Jimmy McStay, who was in turn succeeded in 1945 by yet another Celt who played under Maley, Jimmy McGrory. His rule lasted till 1965. McGrory's most successful team was the one which won the Coronation Cup in 1953 and went on to complete a League and Cup double in 1954. The captain? The present manager, Jock Steen.
When I was here as a player, it wasn't a job to me. It was a place of enjoyment and a place that I enjoyed working in. And the directors of the club were people that I have known both as a player, as a coach, and now as a manager. And I look forward to working with these people.
Celtic are now a large and successful club. But Brother Walfrid's aim in founding the club has never been lost sight of. Each year, more is given to charity than is distributed to directors and shareholders.
We regard everybody connected with the Celtic Football Club as one big family. In every way, we treat them as individuals. We have always tried, as far as possible, to rear our own players. Many of our great teams have been reared by ourselves, as has more or less the present team, with 1 or 2 exceptions.
3-2.
Assistant manager Sean Fallon is now the only Irishman at Parkhead.
Tremendous family atmosphere here. That is obvious anytime you see the boys together with their laughter and joking with each other.
With a brogue like that, who's going to argue with him?
I think when you bring in young boys such as we have playing for us at the moment, see them achieving manhood and see them playing for their country and bringing honour and distinction to their club, I think these are the things that give me great pleasure indeed. I would say that seeing these young fellas who more or less left school come in here, now they've all got families, and I would say quite secure for the rest of their life through their efforts on the playing field. I don't think this in any doubt gives anyone greater pleasure than seeing these things being achieved.
What is it like to be a Celtic player? Billy McNeil is captain.
Once the first couple of weeks of the season are underway, normally training is restricted to the mornings only. We've been described very often as a fit side. I think this is true because we've put a lot of effort into training. We train very hard in the mornings. Afternoons are free, which means for the married lads like myself, it's an ample opportunity to play with the kids in the garden. Keeps me very fit, this too, by the way. At night too, well, we've often got ample time off at night for leisure, for our own purposes, hobbies or golfing or anything. But at the same time too, with the success of the team, we find that we've had more and more call on our services to present medals, to attend quiz shows, to even just to attend normal supporters function. This keeps us pretty well active in the nights, in the evenings too.
This has been a tough year for Celtic. To cope with the injuries and the strain on players, Jock Stein has operated a first-team pool of 16 players. 13 of them have played for their country. What other club could leave out 2 or 3 internationalists each week without provoking transfer requests?
Come on, Joe, back off.
My injury has been a big disappointment to me, as everyone will gather, especially when the team are going so well this year. It looks like the boys will clear the boards. As a boy, I always dreamed about playing for Celtic, and when the chance came along for me to sign for Celtic, I jumped at it. Only players who have played for Celtic can say this, and even the old-timers will say the same. They always feel that once they pull the Celtic jersey on, there's just a feeling it can't be described. And although I'm not in the team, as I said before, it's a disappointment, but my heart's there with them every time they're on that park, and I hope that they do clear the boards, even although I may not be playing.
Players and supporters alike feel part of this tradition. Schoolboys can recite the famous teams of the past like litanies. Half-back lines like Young, Loney and Hay. The sheet anchor of the side which won the league 6 times in a row between 1905 and 1910. Brilliant individuals like Jimmy Quinn and McMenemy. And of course, Patsy Gallagher, second from the right in the front row in a match against Ayr United in 1923, as his own playing days were drawing to a close. Some say he was the greatest inside forward they have ever seen. Comparing past with present is always impossible in sport. The greats of yesterday were good enough to be the best then, and who can ask more than that?
Patsy Gallagher, to me, was one of the greatest footballers I ever saw. And just to recount, and one of the famous goals in my first cup final, 1925, Patsy Gallagher, he got a pass from Peter Wilson, right on our own 18 yards line, and I'll guarantee that he beat about 5 men on the road and staggered. Every time he was tackled, he was down in the ground, he got up as quickly, and then inside the 6 yards line, he made a somersault and took the ball with him between his feet and into the net.
McGrory himself is another Celtic legend, but we have a yardstick for his achievements. His record of 550 goals in first-class football has never been equalled. Many of them, like this one which set up the new record in 1935, were scored with his head. Yet he very nearly didn't come to Parkhead at all.
Well, I said, there's one club I wouldn't like to go to, and that was Celtic. So I was only a young lad, and Celtic had Johnny Mackay, famous inside forward, as a reserve to Patsy Gallagher, so what chance had I of getting a game? But of course that didn't make any difference when they come and asked me to sign. I signed without any hesitation at all.
In the same team as McGrory was one of the best-loved Celtic players of all time, goalkeeper John Thompson. He joined Celtic in 1927, when he was only 18. He came from Wellesley in Fife. By the time he was 21, he had established himself as Scotland's national goalkeeper. One chronicler claims he had the spring of a jaguar and the effortless grace of a skimming swallow. Some of his saves are still talked of. He seemed to be able to change the direction of his dive in mid-air. In 1928, in the Glasgow Cup final, he defied Queen's Park almost single-handed, and Celtic won 2-0. Songs have been written about him. Yet John Thompson, like so many others from Sonny Jim Young at the turn of the century to Jock Stein and many of the present team, was neither Irish nor Catholic. Celtic have never cared what a player's religion was, providing he had the ability and character to play for Celtic.
Here are the teams, Glasgow Rangers and Dark Shirts, playing on their own ground. John Thompson, Scottish international goalkeeper, is among the Celtic team who play in striped shirts.
Celtic fielded John Thompson, Cook and McGonigal, Wilson, McStay and Geekins, R. Thompson and A. Thompson, McGrory, Scarf and Napier. Rangers, Dawson Gray and Macaulay, Meikle John Simpson and Brown, Fleming and Marshall, English, McPhail and Morton. Famous names in both teams, but for the 75,000 crowd, it was a dull game. Thompson hesitated before diving at the forward's feet. 6 hours later, he died in the Victoria Infirmary. He was only 23. "50,000 people lined the route of his funeral." Celtic, like the race whose name they bear, seem fated to have great joys and great sorrows. There are happier memorials too. Celtic have won every honour in football and have a habit of winning any cup that is up for retention by the victors. They won the Empire Exhibition Trophy in 1938, the Victory in Europe Cup after the war, the St Mungo Trophy, the Coronation Cup in 1953, and the unique award of a shield to commemorate their never-equalled run of 6 league wins in succession. But much of the glory was in the distant past, and supporters are reluctant to live on memories.
As a schoolboy, when I supported Celtic, my memories are a wee bit disappointing. I had heard from uncles and various other relatives of the great Celtic team of the past, like every other schoolboy at that time. But my own memories round about then were very, very disappointing. As I said, Celtic seemed to have gone through a very, very lean spell. Since then, it's always been my ambition to be a member of a Celtic team, consistently winning honours. I think that Celtic's place in Scottish football is at the top of the league. It's regularly winning trophies, and nowadays is even more important, is representing Scotland in Europe.
McNeil and many of the present team were probably schoolboys. Even as a player, Steen was a strategist rather than a brilliant individualist.
The 4-2-4 that we've been playing. You know, the main idea as well of it is to try and create space for ourselves.
For the second year running, Jock Steen has been named Britain's Manager of the Year.
We all know that you've got to play the game in space. So it's up to each individual player, not necessarily on the ball, off the ball or otherwise, to make room for somebody else who's coming into the space to use it. We know normally our midfield men are Bobby and Bertie. So these are the men here we want to get playing. So these men here have got to make space by attracting men to take them away, to allow them to get playing. Which if we get the game built up here and everybody's swinging across the field here, bringing this here for Tam Gemmell in most cases to come through here and do something, or the same on the other side of the field. Jim Craig or whoever it may be on this side.
That's a very good move, that, boss. You know, when we holding the ball in the middle of the park there, big Yogi hesitating just that few seconds to allow Tommy Gemmell to come up the park.
Well, that's all right if Yogi hesitates to take the fullback away and give me time to come up behind him.
At the back, it's always been Billy and John Clark tighten up here at the back.
Well, as far as I can see, boss, it just means that John and I'll have to make up our mind early which one of us is going to pick up the main striker.
Perhaps his greatest triumph is that he has taken 11 players who individually don't think they're the best in the world and moulded them into a team with so much faith in one another that they are. For goalkeeper Simpson too, a dream year. At 36, his 22nd season in senior football. He was playing football when most of the present team were in their prams. The support, the tradition, the atmosphere all help, but it's the dedicated professionalism of players and staff that win the matches.
Any team that can create something from a dead ball, a shot at goals, this is something that, this is success. They don't always go in, as you'll see in some of the shooting that some of them have at times. We're a bit annoyed ourselves at it. But if you never try anything, you never succeed.
But it can pay important dividends. Celtic v Dukla Prague. A free kick and a goal to make it 3-1, enough to see them through the return leg in Prague and so become the first British team ever to reach the final of the European Cup. Only 4 days after that return game in Czechoslovakia, Celtic had to play in the Scottish Cup final against Aberdeen. Clubs have a habit of slumping in form after a midweek European fixture, especially an away one. Celtic had done so the previous year, when after losing to Liverpool in the Cup Winners' Cup, they only drew with Rangers in the Scottish Cup final and lost the replay. Would it happen again? You never can tell in the Cup. One mistake and you're runner-up.
Well, this is another game, no different from the last one. You know well from the season started, every game's been an important one. So let's make sure that we don't slip up with being casual, being careless and early in the game. There'll be refereeing mistakes in the game, some for you, some against you, but make sure that referees' decisions don't upset each individual style of play. Accept the decisions, good and bad, and get on with the game. This can be a year that every one of us can remember, so let's make sure that each player helps each other. Make sure if somebody's having a bad game, somebody near him helps him. So let's go now, Billy, and make sure that this is another game that'll add to the rest of the victories we've had, and it'll be a season we'll all remember.
the players after 60 competitive games that season must have been immense. The league, the cup, even the European Cup seemed within their grasp, yet nothing was theirs yet. The 126,000 crowd were in fine voice. Most of the Celtic team have been Celtic supporters since childhood. Playing for Celtic is for them not a job, but the fulfilment of a dream. This fantastic loyalty to the club is what makes the difference between 11 individuals and a great team. had been bought only a few months previously, just before Joe McBride was injured. He was paying dividends, and well on his way to a Scottish Cup and League medal, and the prospect of playing in the final of the European Cup. 20 minutes after the end of the game, not a soul had left the ground, waiting in vain to greet their heroes.
Coming back was difficult because a club with the history this club has, it really must be the best, and to put yourself in a seat to give it the best is, I think it's something really great to try it. But I always felt that this would be a challenge worthwhile doing, more particularly as the players that I had brought more or less to the club in some respect, the McNeils, the Murdochs, the Alds, many of the other boys who come in here nothing at all. I was coming back to work alongside them, and I felt that together we could do something to make the club great again.
The cup was back at Parkhead for the 19th time. Now for the league. Celtic v Rangers. The most crucial encounter between the two clubs in years. James Bond, alias Sean Connery, was there. Celtic had faltered against Dundee United in midweek, and now only a week after the cup final, they were facing their old rivals. Probably only one man in the crowd wasn't concerned with the ancient rivalry between Celtic and Rangers. Helenio Herrera, the manager of Internazionale Milan, Celtic's opponents in the European Cup final. But for everybody else, this was a game which could decide the Scottish League. Celtic needed 1 point from their last two games to clinch the title. Rangers were their closest challengers. Not that an old firm game needs any added excitement. They are seldom great football games. Too much is at stake. Even the supporters go home exhausted. The teams had met 3 times already this season, and Celtic had won each game. But this is a match which has a habit of running counter to form. 10 years previously, as rank outsiders, Celtic had beaten Rangers 7-1 in the final of the League Cup. A result as isolated as it was spectacular. But Celtic supporters have never allowed Rangers to forget it. Rangers' first goal was a winner all the way. Had Celtic taken on too much? Were they losing form just when the league looked within their grasp? Within a minute came the answer. A scrambled affair, but still an equaliser. Half-time, 1 each. A goal worthy to win any league title, again from Jimmy Johnson. Rangers snatched an equaliser, but the league was won. Seldom can both sets of supporters have left the ground so happy. A draw saved Rangers' honour, but it gave Celtic the league. At last, a break. But not before they had played Kilmarnock, and 9 of the team were also picked for the Scottish team pool against Russia. Hardly the best preparation for one of the most crucial games in Scottish football history, the European Cup final. Celtic's cure for battle fatigue has been Sea Mill on the Ayrshire coast for over 50 years. But in the mornings, it's back to hard work. Sharpen up the shooting. An awkward bouncing ball or a rebound might give the chance of a goal in the European Cup final. Before the final, the great trek began. At dawn on Sunday, the Celticade of cars and buses started the long drive to Lisbon. Estoril, Portugal. Celtic's hideout for the pre-match preparation. Green and white. A good omen? Tuesday morning, the team left rain-soaked Glasgow and 3 hours later stepped blinking into the Portuguese sun. Somehow or other, there were hundreds of Celtic supporters at the airport to greet them. If Celtic ever go to the moon, you'll find supporters already there waiting for them. A visit to the National Stadium. This is where it would all happen. Training at 5:30, the time of the match 2 days later. To get used to the heat. Inter Milan would have no worries on that score. Ronnie Simpson, a great year. At 36, his first Scottish Cup medal, league medal, international cap, and named Player of the Year. Now a win in the European Cup would complete a fairy tale. A fairy tale too for Jock Stein, a forgotten man in football, playing for Llanelli in Wales. Brought back to Celtic as a stopgap, becomes captain of the side and wins a league and cup double. Put out of the game through injury, turns to coaching, successfully. Leaves Celtic to manage Dunfermline and Hibs, now back as Celtic's manager. The club have made a clean sweep of every trophy in Scottish football. Already Britain's Manager of the Year for the second year running, Lisbon could make him a Celtic immortal. Llanelli to Lisbon. He had come a long way. The next day, a morning session at the National Stadium itself. Inter Milan, watch. In Glasgow, the great airlift starts. Planes are leaving Abbotssinch and Prestwick every few minutes through the night and all the next morning. 12,000 Celtic supporters went to Lisbon, the biggest sporting airlift in history. Brother Walfred would have smiled. He had founded a team to feed the poor of the East End of Glasgow. Now in many cases the grandchildren of those self-same poor were flying to Lisbon for a few hours, hoping to see that team, his team, become the champions of Europe. The Celticade arrives in Lisbon, most of it. One bus broke down, and supporters hired a fleet of taxis to make a dash to see the game. There are hitchhikers, campers. The Portuguese take them to their hearts. Herrera had appealed to them to support Inter Milan because they too were Latins. But surely there was something Latin about these men from the cold north who sang and waved flags all day and had travelled so far to support their team. Despite their success, Celtic have a simpatico quality. Underdogs throughout the world feel that Celtic is their team. If faith and hope could win football matches, Inter Milan might as well have stayed at home. This was something of a crusade, a pilgrimage. Celtic supporters had not travelled this far to be beaten. They would will the team to win. Previously, Celtic had been the first club in Scotland to win 4 major trophies in a season. Surely this was the year for them to win 5. And it was a brand new trophy too, the sort that Celtic usually win. This was their first time in the European Cup, and Celtic are famous first-timers. There were all sorts of reasons why Celtic were bound to win, if only fairy tales came true. Familiar faces are recognised in the crowd. It seemed as though every family had a representative there for this great occasion in the folk history of Glasgow. All the planning, training, coaching hoping was over. 90 minutes of football. One mistake on one side or another could decide it all. Some of the Celtic players were singing as they came on the field. The homegrown side from the east end of Glasgow against the costliest team in Europe. Celtic competing for the first time versus Inter Milan, who had already won the trophy twice. Celtic lined up without McBride, Inter without Suarez.
Personally, I'd be worried there wasn't a certain amount of tension before a game. Tension is a good thing. It gets you built up for the occasion. It's one of these things you feel built up before the game, but take it as it comes.
Well, there goes the start. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. I've never seen the team better prepared, so let's hope the right result comes our way. Well, we've made a great start to the game. This is what we wanted, to have the Italian team working hard. This is a dangerous moment for us. There's two players out of position at the moment. This is a vital moment for us. A goal lost here against a team defensive such as the Italians are very dangerous indeed. Well, we knew it was a hard job before the game, but the loss of this goal made it don't know how hard. This would find the true calibre of the team if they could overcome such a setback as this.
This was becoming a moral victory for Celtic, but Celtic are fed up with moral victories. Surely a penalty kick wouldn't rob a fairy story of its happy ending. Wave after wave of Celtic attacks broke on the finest defence in Europe.
Playing into a packed defence such as this can be heartbreaking for any team, but only more care in the final pass can get the real reward. We've got through the Italian defence often enough and into dangerous positions, but a final pass has just been that wee bit out. Goals don't come easily against a defence of this calibre. first half gone, we can be reasonably happy with the performance, although we haven't any balls in the back of the net. The only thing that worries is if they play too long without getting a goal, they may get dispirited, but we feel we're getting on top of the Italians. Their fitness is much better than theirs. That was an instance where a man shooting for goal had a better view of the goal and the ball was well on target. Let's hope we get 2 or 3 more like that. At this stage, some desperation was creeping into our play and a goal was badly needed. was a perfect example of what we'd spoke about at half-time. The ball being cut back away from the defence with a oncoming defender with a clear look at the goals, and Tommy Gemmell certainly made a good job of it.
What an equaliser. Inter knew even now they were beaten. They had defended too long. Celtic were in top gear.
The thoughts were now, keep the pace of the game going quick, don't slow it down. This would only be to the Italian team's advantage to slow the game down, as they were hopelessly unfit compared with their players. It's dangerous now to let them off the hook and get back into a game that they looked as if they themselves thought they had it closely tied up in defence. Another instance of a defender getting more of the goal to shoot at. Another great save by the goalkeeper. It was important at this stage of the game, even if we achieved nothing other than keeping the Inter Milan team working hard, that we were bound to come out on top, even if it went to extra time. This thought didn't make us afraid at all. All we had to do was still to continue to work hard and keep them going. Well, that's the one we've been waiting for, and I don't honestly think that the Italian team can take it back from us. Only the fellas in the green and white jerseys can lose this game now by their own carelessness, and I don't think that there's any chance of this, as they've worked too hard all the season to try and win this competition. Saturday in this particular match has stood between us and a big score. His performance has been one of the best goalkeeping performances so far in the match that I have seen, but there's still time to go in the match yet.
Could Celtic hold out? The support massed at the moat, which some optimist had hoped would keep them off the field. Then the final whistle. And hearts bursting with joy overflowed. Their boys had done it.
This must be the highlight of all Celtic supporters. Naturally, the field's now invaded with them all going mad over this occasion. Every one of us feel this is the greatest moment in their career, and naturally we're all delighted. I don't think anyone could be happier than we are, and I'm more delighted for the team's sake. They've worked well, they've achieved it, and we're delighted that so many supporters have travelled so far and got the reward they deserved. Winning this European Cup is something they set out to do. There's 11 of them on the field, but this is not the team. The team is built up of able directors, management, training staff, lots of youngsters behind the scenes. Everyone has pulled themselves together for the one thing, Celtic Football Club. Not only to make ourselves the best team in Scotland, not only to make ourselves the best team in Britain, but to make ourselves the #1 team in Europe, which we've achieved today, and naturally we're all delighted by it.
No jig, no song was exultant enough. It was the end of a lifetime of longing. The enthusiasm got out of hand. Players lost jerseys, boots, and the wonder is that no one was seriously hurt. Turning point in the history of football. 80 years ago, the first Celtic team had stunned Scotland with their new style of play. Now their successors electrified Europe with fast, attractive football. And it was a typical Celtic victory, coming from behind, against the odds. It still hadn't registered. They were champions of Europe. No need to look back anymore. This is the greatest moment in 80 wonderful years. story is not yet complete. Celtic are a team with roots. They had to come forward.
Right, gangway there. This way, please. Gangway. Gangway there. Come on. Come on, now. Get to the side. Come on, lad. Come on, now. This way. Come on, get them through here. Come on. Come on. Over here. Over here. This way, please. This way.
That's a cut in the boat.
On the night of the game, the streets of Glasgow had been deserted. Now, Celtic Park was already full. The old who had seen the great days and wondered if they would ever return. The young who had once doubted if the great days ever existed, but who could now retell this, the greatest of them all. Even outside the city, clusters of people stopped to cheer the bus as it made its way from the airport to the city centre. The streets were thronged with people, 200,000 of them. Celtic's victory united Glasgow as no other event had ever done. That night, everyone was a Glasgow nationalist. The waiting support seemed to engulf the bus in an embrace as warm as any mother ever gave a returning son. Their boys had done it, and life would never be the same again. They would hold their heads a little higher from now on. In 1892, Celtic had built a stadium for 70,000 people when the biggest gate in football was only 10,000. The centre spot was turf cut that morning in Donegal. It had been nicknamed Paradise. How it deserved that name that night. Paradise in Kerrydale Street.
I myself, and I'm quite sure that all the people in the past who had the great honour to be in charge of this club do not regard themselves as other than trustees of a wonderful tradition. The club is much bigger than any player or any individual who connected with it. "80 years ago,
James Kelly left the famous Renton to take his chance with the new club, Celtic. Now his son, Chairman Bob Kelly, put the European Cup in the place that somehow had been waiting for it ever since.